as you can see, on the beautiful windward side of Oahu. Where this workshop today is being presented by our Kaka'ako and Hawaii Investment Ready. We're looking to provide aspiring entrepreneurs and students with mana'o and lessons learned from some real life social entrepreneurs. We hope to inspire the next generation to not only succeed in business, but to drive positive impact in their communities. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping matters. We'll have 2 speaker portions today, followed by 2 Q&A sections. If you have any questions throughout the workshop, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get them answered during the Q&A section. Everyone who stays for the entirety of our workshop will be entered into a special prize drawing, so please stick around. Now we're ready to get started. Here with me is Keoni Lee, CEO of Hawaii Investment Ready. He also co-founded ʻŌiwi TV, a media production company, and also Bye Bye Collective. Keoni is a serial entrepreneur, an inspiring leader in our Hawaiian community. Mahalo nui for joining us today, Keoni.
Gotta use the mic. Hi, Kanoe.
Do you want to talk a little more about your entrepreneurial journey and what brought you to HIR?
Oh, yeah. It's been a few years. You know, I think my entrepreneurial journey started when I was young. I kind of always had this entrepreneurial drive and mindset. My dad always encouraged me to go into business as a way to like be successful in life. But I was also surrounded by some really good role models. You know, I grew up in Mililani, and one of my best friends, the family is the Taniokas, and I got to really be around Uncle Mel Tanioka and see like how you can be really successful at business and still like give back to the community and you know, really like serve community in a way with how you do business. And so, you know, for me, I always kind of knew at some point I would get into business for myself. So I went to business school, undergrad at Oregon State, and did some computer stuff along the way too, and then came home eventually and got into the MBA program at Scheidler at UH Manoa, and that's where I met Na'alehu Anthony. He's a few years older than me at KS, so I didn't know him at Kamehameha, but we connected in grad school, and yeah, he really helped me to find my path with respect to being an entrepreneur in the Hawaiian community. You know, he was really well connected in the community. You know, he's a crew member, Hokulea, so he introduced me into that world. And I think, you know, having come from a kind of Western business training, you know, learning about finance and economics and doing all those things, like that was the path. That's how I saw how to do business, right? Like capitalism was great. And all I wanted to do was be a hardcore successful capitalist and make a lot of money. And, you know, and like my view of things back then was, you know, the only way that I could give back and contribute to the Hawaiian community was like make a lot of money and like donate it back. That's all I could think about, right? And so through, you know, building relationship with him and building relationship like with other folks through Hokulea and other areas in the Hawaiian community, I started to realize that you could use the business and finance skills in a more productive way for our community, because, you know, economic self-determination and empowerment is another pathway for us to uplift the Lahui. And you know, I didn't know what that was going to look like. But that was the seed that was planted around 2004, 2005. And then, you know, a few years later, Na'alehu comes back to me and is like, I got an idea for a business. Maybe I want to see if you're interested. And yeah, that's when it was in 2007. He was like, there's this video on demand thing that's technology that's emerging at Oceanic Cable at the time. And it might be a way for us to get Hawaiian content on TV. And so we started to think about it and put together the business plan in 2007. And in 2008, after a lot of no's, with our idea, because we had like a 2-pager and like a business plan, and we shopped it around, and everybody thought we were crazy because like we had no money, right? And they're like, you can't stand up a TV station. Like after about a year or so of a lot of no's, I think we finally got our first contract, and we launched, and that was with Kamehameha schools. They saw the value of um, having their content on TV, right? They were producing a bunch of content, you know, Imua TV back at the time, if you're old enough to remember that, and a bunch of other things. And there was video being produced in the Hawaiian community, but it was all over the place. And so what we did is we created a home for it on TV. You know, this platform at the time in 2007, 2008 was the dominant screen, right? There wasn't social media. There wasn't, you know, like YouTube and all of that, right? So it was the dominant screen at the time. And so it was a way for us to get Hawaiian content and create a home for it on TV. And all we were really asking people to do was change the channel, right? And then there was all this Hawaiian stuff. Yeah, and then in 2009, we got connected with the Punana Leo and their efforts to, with ʻŌiwi Ola to put Hawaiian language on TV.
We each have our own story of reconnecting. We are one of those fortunate communities, indigenous and native communities, that are very much on the upswing. Our language is being revitalized, our cultural practices are being revitalized, and through the work that we do at ʻŌiwi TV, through the stories that we want to tell, we are opening up a veil into the Hawaiian community, and we are hopefully sharing stories about what the modern kind of Hawaiian experience is like today.
Okay, mahalo, Keoni. What was that like as you built ʻŌiwi TV, and what led you into the path that you're in now with Hawaii Investment Ready?
ʻŌiwi TV, I think for me it was a learning experience. It was so personally, like I got to have a front row seat to all the issues, the people, the ideas throughout Hawaii. And so it was like this full-on educational experience for me. Like I got to learn from the smartest people doing the most amazing things, and really got to see all the beauty and the intelligence and the innovation that was happening in our communities throughout the state and even beyond. Got to travel around the world to other indigenous communities, you know, and then with Hokulea around the world for 3.5 years, we got to do even more of that. And so I think for me, it's like, one, I got to learn so much about what was really happening on the ground in community. It was also good for me, is like really strengthening and reconnecting and like getting more clear about my own personal like cultural identity. And through all of those experiences, I think it really helped to shape and inform my perspective of how I see the world. You know, having that business training and ability to understand like Western economics and capitalism, and then matching that with on the ground in community perspective and knowledge has changed how I look at business and economic development. And, you know, one thing to mention, when we were starting ʻŌiwi TV, my son was born in the beginning, like in 2009. And I think as I was starting to think about like the impact of media and what we were trying to do with ʻŌiwi TV and the change that we were seeking to create by owning our own narratives and telling our own stories and putting forth these stories that were happening in the Hawaiian community that were more reflective of the truth instead of what mainstream media would cover and portray Native Hawaiians as, and what was happening in our community, right? Back then, like even to this today, but even more so back then, like when Hawaiians were on the front page of the newspaper or on TV, it wasn't good stuff, right? It was perpetuating like the stereotypes and the negatives, right, of our community. So we felt like we had an opportunity to change things and create change with ʻŌiwi TV. And so, like, when my son was born, it was like the first time that I started to think about the future in a different way. And I felt really bad about the kind of future that he would be inheriting. And so I think it was at that moment, in that kind of mix of things, of opportunity and looking at the future, that I kind of made a commitment, like, I'm going to do whatever I can for the rest of my life to make Hawaii a better place for him and for future generations.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Is that what led you to tackle kind of economic transformation on a larger scale?
Yeah, kind of been getting there along the way. I think, I think you have to be honest about where the situation is in Hawaii, right? People can't afford to live here. It's so expensive. I feel really bad for folks that are younger than me. It's hard to make it, and it looks almost impossible, right? And so, but that's the way that our economy is currently designed, right? It has these outputs of and outcomes of inequity, right? There's a huge gap between those who have wealth and those who do not, and it's growing. And we've become accustomed to seeing our friends and family move away for better opportunities. And I just don't think that's okay. And I think and what drives me in my work is, how do we change that? It's a big task, and people laugh, right? Like I say, when they're like, what do you do? I was like, I'm trying to change the economy. And they're like, oh, great. I'm glad somebody's trying. Right. But I mean, that's the truth of it, right? Like, it's a big daunting thing to talk about, but I actually think we have kind of a plan and a framework to get there.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Hawaii Investment Ready? What's your kuleana, and then what does that work look like?
Yeah. Hawaii Investment Ready started in 2013 as a program, is a business accelerator. So a business accelerator is when you work with existing businesses that have already been established, who are doing their thing but looking to grow. And so you provide skills and trainings and tools and opportunities and access to resources to help these entrepreneurs get to the next level of their business. And so I was actually invited to participate in the first cohort of Hawaii Investment Ready with ʻŌiwi TV. And that was the first time I learned that we were a social enterprise. And a social enterprise is a business that is created for the purpose of creating social or environmental or cultural outcomes. And secondarily is to be financially viable. It's not about making money first, which most businesses are about. And so that was the focus of Hawaii Investment Ready, is to support those kind of purpose-driven businesses and the entrepreneurs like us that were trying to succeed in the dominant economy with our very different types of business models. And so we needed a different kind of support because we don't fit nicely into the boxes, right? We're not purely for-profit and we're not purely non-profit. We're somewhere in between. And so that was what HIR did for a bunch of years. It spun out into its own nonprofit in 2017. And I took over and joined HIR as first CEO in 2019 after I left ʻŌiwi TV and Vai. And so, our work now has expanded beyond just the Accelerator program. I think having done it for a while, we started to realize that these businesses were growing and emerging and there's more of them, but that the funding and investment ecosystem wasn't quite ready because, like I said, we don't fit the boxes nicely, right? And so they didn't know what to do with us. And so HR kind of started to expand its reach and its impact to focus also on the money side of things. So we started doing trainings and workshops with funders and investors through our Leveraging Hawaii Capital series, right? And now in 2022, coming out of COVID, right, we've shifted again to really focus in for the time being on strengthening and scaling our food system. I think we learned in COVID that Hawaii's economy was really vulnerable and fragile, and part of that fragility and vulnerability is our food insecurity. And that, there's a lot of energy and intention and people talking about wanting to grow more food and being more food secure, but real big change hasn't really manifest, right? And so, you know, I think we have to be honest with ourselves as a society and say, if we continue to just do the same things in the same way, we're going to continue to get the same results and outcomes. And so for us, we wanted to try something different and take a different approach. So we reshaped our accelerator to focus in on food enterprises on one hand, and added another side to our accelerator for the money side. So we're going to be doing a funder cohort as well. And our approach with this is, if we bring all of the different stakeholders together and build relationships, build shared understanding, start to build trust, that we create the conditions and opportunities for new types of collaborations and different types of ability to solve some of the systems level dysfunctions and challenges that we have to overcome in Hawaii, right? We have high costs. We have a not so supportive policy landscape in some ways. And like, we act like a US, like, because the US economy is a dominant economy, but we're 2,500 miles away, right? And so we can't operate like the other states. And so we have to really think and overcome some of these challenges that the other places don't really have. And this was our approach to do that.
Amazing. Mahalo for sharing. Why do you feel that HIR's work is important to the ecosystem? And is it aligned to kind of what's happening nationally and globally in the sector?
Yeah, well, I think our work is important, right? Because, or I wouldn't be doing it, obviously. But I think it's important because, like I said, the way our economy is currently designed, it creates inequities. It creates the haves and the have-nots, right? It creates a sense of dependence for our economy on outside forces. And I can't accept that as okay, right? Like, these outcomes are not okay. And if we want better outcomes, if we want to create a more diverse economy, if we want to create opportunity for all of Hawaii's people to have a livable job, like livable conditions, and be able to afford to live here and our future generations to live here, then we got to change the system, right? And you're not going to change the system just by making one-off successful businesses. And we're not going to change the system by importing talent and businesses from elsewhere. Like, we have to grow it from here, right? And we are not short of ideas, right? There's so many ideas and people coming up with solutions from community, people who really understand and know the problems that they're trying to solve for. And those are really, to me, in all of my experiences with ʻŌiwi TV and Hawaii Investment Ready, the folks who are on the ground, who live closest to the problem, who have that lived experience, they have the best ideas to solve them because they know these problems. It's not coming from some ivory tower, right? With folks who think they know how to solve problems. It's really coming from the ground. So it's smart. And so, like, oftentimes these are some of the smartest, most innovative entrepreneurs that I know. And like, I just really want to be able to be with them and support them and walk with them on their journeys to help them be successful. And if we can do it from a systems-based perspective and start to move the money more towards these types of solutions instead of these, what works other places, like, big tech is not going to solve our economy all on its own, right? Like, it might be a part of it, but we need to have a diversity of ideas and innovations. But the ecosystem is not there to support that. So that's the way that I see our role as HR is, how do we create the ecosystem and the infrastructure of, like, practices, mindsets, systems that are going to allow more money to flow to these types of innovators and entrepreneurs.
100%. That's super inspiring. Mahalo. What would you share in terms of advice for students and potential aspiring entrepreneurs, folks that want to get into this space?
Surround yourself with good people. I think one of the things that is really cool about the people that I like to surround myself with now, and you're going to get to hear from a couple of them later, is that we have this peer group of folks who, like, we uplift each other and we support each other and we challenge each other. And we're not also not afraid to tell each other, hey, what you doing? Why are you doing that? Right. And hold each other accountable. And so, you know, having that peer group and surrounding yourself with good people who are going to uplift you and challenge you to be your best, that's the kind of people you want to surround yourself with. And then the other thing is be assertive. Nothing's going to be handed to you, right? If you want something, you got to work hard and you got to go get it. You got to make it happen, right? And that's where you really need to have that entrepreneurial drive and mindset. Like if you're afraid and have a lot of aversion to risk, entrepreneurship is not going to be the best path for you. Like you kind of have to have this tendency to like be assertive and take risk, and you have to nurture that and keep it in control sometimes.
It can be risky out there. That checks and balances of your friend group and peer group in this space is super important. Do you want to move to some questions from the audience?
Sure.
Yeah. Here's a question from Kobe Sameshima. Have you found success in securing increased funding for these social enterprises, despite the fact that they don't fit into the existing boxes, as you said? What has surprised you about that process? What are some of the barriers to alignment, comprehension in the kind of general finance community when it comes to these businesses?
Yeah, I think we are starting to finally see some success. You know, I'll give you an example out of COVID, right? When COVID first hit in the kind of second quarter, like, so we're in March and April of 2020, we were seeing massive shutdown, right? And we saw the unemployment rate for the state go over like 22, 23%. Businesses were closing down, like shuttering, like some temporary, some permanent. But what we took a poll and a survey of the HIR enterprises, and they were performing. They were very resilient to COVID and this kind of crisis. And you know, many of them pivoted how they were serving their customers, and then many of them also like just grew in business because the demand for their services increased. And so what I think that proved is these business models that are really there to support and serve community and create value for community are resilient business models. Because when times got tough, the community, they had a relationship with community stuck by them and they supported them and they even helped them to grow in those times. And so, you know, when we think about a resilient future economy, like these are the businesses and business models that have proven to be the kind of examples that we want to grow more of. And I think the funding ecosystem kind of like, as I was telling that story during COVID, we're starting to pay attention. Also, some of the work that we were doing from 2018 with the Leveraging Hawaii Capital's work also started to shift the conditions for funders and investors. So we are starting to see more movement. Like Ma'o Organic Farms is a great example. They were in the first cohort of Hawaii Investment Ready with us. And, you know, just in the last 3 years, how much growth they've been able to have. They've bought over 200 acres of land. They're going to like 5 times their production, right? So, but they had to raise $11 million or something like that. But they were able to successfully do that and prove that these business models are worth the investment. And so now that we have more examples of these out there, that we're going to see more momentum start to build, because people are going to, and the funders and the bankers and all the different pieces of capital that have to come together to make a deal like that work are starting to pay attention, right?
Here's another question. What are some of the common misconceptions that you had about entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, kind of entering this field?
I think a lot of people, me included, thought that owning a business would just give me all this freedom. Like I can be my own boss. And while that is true in some instances, in some respects, the other side of it is you never get vacations for a while. You're always working all the time. You sacrifice a lot of time with your family and other things in order to get the business up and running. And even to operate, like I missed a lot of time with my kids when they were young because we were working so hard, right? And so you have to be prepared to make the sacrifices to be an entrepreneur. So it's not all one side. There's a duality to it, right? There's a give and a take. And so, yeah, you do get to be the boss and kind of being in control to the extent possible. But it also comes with, a lot of sacrifice and trade-offs, having to worry about payroll, like, especially when you start to get employees. It's all fun and games until you have employees, right? And then when you get employees and it's like, you're responsible for them. And then they have families and kids and you know them and they're like your family. And like, so that's a heavy burden to carry, right? And so there was a lot of sleepless nights in the last 15 years, So, I mean, that's one of the things. You just have to be prepared for that. But I would still recommend it. Like if you believe you have an idea and you can create value and, you don't want other people telling you what to do, then by all means, go for it, right? But everybody has a different like cost benefit analysis or risk assessment with entrepreneurship. And like for me, it was like I couldn't be told what to do for the rest of my life. Like I just couldn't. I hard head, I stubborn, and I was just like, nah, I can do it myself.
Right.
And so we just did, right?
So you talked a lot about the risk involved and the kind of risk tolerance that you need to have as an entrepreneur. Did folks tell you that it couldn't be done?
Oh, all the time. But in Hawaii, people don't say it to your face, right? But we know, like, they doubted what we could do and get ʻŌiwi TV up. Like, people thought we was crazy. Like, you just two young Hawaiians with a computer and a camera and no money. Like, how are you guys gonna do this? Start up a TV station. But you gotta believe in yourself, right? If you know that your idea is good and you're really solving a problem and creating value in new ways, and that you gotta believe in it, because this kind of work is not instant success. You're not gonna create an app and in 2 years go public with a 10x return. Mm-hmm. Like the kind of work that we're doing it takes time. Like if you really want to create long-lasting value and change our economy and make things different, like it takes work because you're changing mindsets and behaviors of the people around you, your customers, your partners, your investors, because they're not used to this kind of business. But when you think about like what's going on globally, right? So these businesses like that we work with Hawaii Investment Ready, there's a new term for it. It's called fourth sector businesses, right? So like there's the private sector, the public sector, and the charitable sector. Those are the three kind of main sectors of the economy that people know about. Mm-hmm. And the fourth sector are these innovative business models that are kind of collaborative amongst the three, which is good. Like when I talked about COVID and being resilient, like when you have a mix of grant funding and charitable funding with private earned revenue, and like you have this mix of revenue streams, you become more resilient because if one goes down, you have the others to rely on. And so this is kind of actually the trend. This fourth sector economy is the fastest growing sector in the world globally. It's somewhere around 12% of global GDP and growing. This is the way that business is going, right? The consciousness of people are realizing that capitalism is taking us to the brink of extinction and creating all of these inequities and destroying our planet, right? Like people are waking up to that. So this type of business that I'm talking about that we've been really pushing is going to become the new normal at some point. That's what I believe, right? And it's going to be the more common thing that people want to do. And I think young people, knowing that how hard it is to be successful here and how things look and what kind of future that they're honestly inheriting, they're motivated. And I've seen this boom in the last 5+ years of a lot of young, especially Hawaiians and local kids from Hawaii, like wanting to get into entrepreneurship. And so we need to create the ecosystem to support this kind of growth.
Perfect follow-up to that. A question from Kairi Puaoi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing. Have you ever had self-doubt about being Hawaiian enough? And if so, how do you get past that? And even if you never experienced that, what would you say to those who feel stuck, like they can't serve the lahui because they don't feel like they fit, don't feel like they're Hawaiian enough?
Oh, we're gonna have therapy session.
Such a good question.
That's a really good question. I think we all face like, am I Hawaiian enough? Like, but that's the reality of being in a post-colonial context, right?
100%.
Like colonization had its impacts on us, right? And all of us were impacted by colonization in different ways, right? Some of us got really disconnected from our aina and from our families and our connection to place, and some of us less so, and we're able to maintain traditions and ways of being, and we're all along that spectrum, right? And I think for me in the work at OVTV and understanding my cultural identity was finally letting go of that shame of not feeling Hawaiian enough, and like understanding that everybody is on this journey to work back to being more Hawaiian, right? Whether it's learning our language, doing our cultural practices, reconnecting to Aina, just how we are in every day. I think that is just like the normalization of being Hawaiian is happening at scale now. And like we just all have to be understanding and empathetic to help each other just keep taking steps in the right direction, right? You know, using more Hawaiian in your language, sending your kids to immersion schools, like, just doing whatever you can to be Hawaiian and to learn more about your culture. And, people who try to knock you down and go after that, like, it's so upsetting, right? Like the whole crabs in the bucket kind of mentality that people often refer to. We go knock the bucket over. That's kind of what I'm thinking. We go knock the bucket over. We all gonna get out. Yeah. So
100%. That's awesome. And the immersive experiences you talked about, like getting involved with Hokulea, being out on Aina, there's a lot of programs and opportunities now, probably more so than when you started out. One last question I think we had. If you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what is one thing that you would tell him?
Oh, I don't miss that guy. I don't miss that guy at all. Now, like I said, I was really lost. I was disconnected, right? I hadn't really found my roots yet. So I think what I would go back and tell that 20-year-old self is like, go find your path, right? Go try different opportunities, talk to different people, really find where you fit in and where you can surround yourself with others that are going to uplift you and like not pull you down, and just be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like be authentic, right? And because I think that's what the world craves more than anything else right now is authenticity. And if you are true to yourself and you know who you are, you know where you come from, you know what you stand for, and you stay true to that, that's the kind of purposeful life that it took me a long time to get to. And now that I'm in this kind of place, I would never, ever want to go back. And it's not easy sometimes because, you got to hold strong to what you believe in. And even if it doesn't agree with other people, but as long as it's for the right reasons and the right purpose and you're being pono, and then it's always going to work out in the end.
So mahalo, Keoni. We're wrapping up our time together. If folks want to get in touch with you or learn more about HIR, how can they find you?
Oh, I can go to our website, hiready.net, or any of our social media platforms at hiready. We're pretty easy to get a hold of. And yeah, if you have an idea, if you want some advice or are looking on to growing your business, yeah, reach out.
Awesome. Mahalo. We'll take a quick break and have our other panelists join us for our next session. Welcome back, everyone. We have two more speakers joining us now. Rick Barboza is the co-owner of Hui Kū Maoli Ola and co-founder of Papahana Kuaola. Hui Kū is right down the road from here and is a leading supplier of native plants, Native Hawaiian plants, and landscaping services in the state. Aloha, Rick.
Aloha.
Also joining is Kanekoa Kukea-Shultz. He's the executive director of Kākoʻo ʻŌiwi, where we are now. Kākoʻo is a nonprofit aiming to restore Hawaii's agricultural and ecological productivity and improve food sustainability through cultural, educational, and ecosystem restoration programs. Aloha. So, first question for this panel. You folks know each other really well. This is the support system you were alluding to. If you could describe the others in one word, what would it be?
I'll lead off. For Koa, it's concern. Like he's always like concerned about everybody. Yeah, you good, you good. Oh, you good, you guys sure you good. And like that's literally like 3/4 of the words that come out of your mouth. For Keoni, now it's crabby because he is the releaser of crabs. So I'm glad I got it out. On a serious note, but it's true. Are you okay? I am. Okay. I am. Thank you. On a serious note, Rick, like we've been friends long time. Yeah. I really appreciate the push that you guys are doing at Hui Kū. And for us, it's just support. So I think of you and with the aloha that you provide for us, I really mahalo that. And Krabby over here, he's always been supportive of me. Like, I've known him since, long time. And so you guys have both always been pillars. And obviously, plenty of our friends and family have been supports for us. But I really, really value that.
She said one word, bro.
Yeah. When do I ever listen? Listening is another word that I should be described as. Okay, Mom.
So Ko and I were actually high school classmates and friends in high school, so it can go way back. But yeah, he's always concerned is a good word, Rick. I was gonna just say grumpy. He's always grumpy. In a good way, I guess. Yeah.
It's another word for concern.
Yeah, like just. And Rick, like, I cannot do one word. You can't describe Rick Barboza in one word. I would just say Portuguese nerd. He's a Portuguese nerd.
Not one word.
Bro. I know, but I cannot describe you in one word. You are an enigma. Oh, enigma. There we go. That's my word.
Anomaly.
Yeah.
Amazing. Mahalo. Rick, can you start us off and tell us a little bit more about why and how you started Hui Kū Maoli Ola?
By accident. I mean, me and my business partner, Kapali Ku Sherman, we both grew up in Waimanalo, but on like opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, he went Punahou, I went Kamehameha. But I think we both grew up as friends from small kid time, and then we were always into collecting stuff, you know, and baseball cards, whatever. And then, but at the same time, we were also very competitive just because, you know, we had this Punahou Kamehameha always, you know, I mean, just this mental game that we'd always play with. And then, yeah, I know, all the time. No. But I think a part of that, you know, kind of culminated in this business. But when we started Hui Kū Maoli Ola, we never intended on starting Hui Kū Maoli Ola. We never went like, hey, we should really start a native plant nursery. It was just more about a hobby of trying to figure out, because we really didn't start anything until we were in college. And he was Hawaiian studies, I was zoology. And then there was, we kind of both came to the realization that, man, everything that we're surrounded by isn't Hawaiian. So what is Hawaiian? And it led us on this journey of trying to figure out, okay, what plants are actually Hawaiian, because all the plants in our yards aren't. And so we would always go hiking and try to find this plant in this book and this plant in that book. And then we would start to meet people, and then that would lead us to going to other islands and trying to find these other plants, you know. So it was just like a you know, Pokemon thing, but with plants. So cool. And you know, we just had to get them all, you know. And so we had like this. We would stand in line for like 3 hours at Lion Arboretum plant sales in the dark of the morning so that we could be one of the first guys to get whatever plants that they were going to be selling. And now we supply the Line Arboretum sales with native plants. So it's kind of a crazy, flip. But we did a lot of stuff in order to acquire these plants, and but with no business plan, no model to kind of mimic or follow. It was just like, I want to see these, I want to touch these and be able to look at them all the time. And from there, it kind of became like, okay, we got all of these plants. Now what? It's like, well, let's put them in the ground. So we started to do these small scale restoration projects, and we were kind of content with doing that. And then a lot of the funding that funded those projects kind of got cut off. So it's like, okay, we want to keep doing that. So then we became landscapers so that we could do it. And then the landscaping led to consultations, and then the consultations led to more landscapes, and we needed bigger nurseries. So it just kind of, and it's still kind of expanding. And so that was kind of the whole thing. It was an accident. We didn't plan on it, but we're still learning and we're still trying to grow because there's still way more that needs to be done.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Can you tell us a little bit about what you brought with you today? I think there was a tour of your farm as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So a lot of the plants. So our big thing, and my big thing within the company, is to bring plants into cultivation that we can utilize for where people live, and the reason behind that is, Hawaii is the extinction capital of the world, or endangered species capital of the world. And what that kind of boils down to is that, based off of our landmass area, there's no place on earth that has more extinct or endangered species than Hawaii. And a big problem with that is where we live and where we choose to do our day-to-day life is in the area that once held our greatest biodiversity. So what we're trying to do is just bring that biodiversity back to where it used to be. And it's just that happens that where it used to be is where we all live. And so a lot of these plants that we have are kind of the resilient ones that still kind of have a foothold in some places that are greatly disturbed. So for example, this lehua, and I got another little lehua over there, was collected from this valley behind us within this ahupua'a, but not really far away from where people live. And so we're trying to collect those plants, bring them into propagation, and put them back into the homes and kind of redistribute them to increase the size of their populations. So I was blocking my face. That was what I was trying to do. But then, and then also, we like to showcase plants that come from other islands. We're fortunate enough to supply all of the Home Depots in the state with native plants. And so even though our main location is on Oahu in Heia, we grow plants from all over the state, and we try to ship them back to those islands. So for example, this is hibiscus Kokio subspecies St. Johnianus from Kauai, and it's only found in the northwestern coastal valleys of that island. But now you can buy them at Home Depot, and so we just try to ship back the plants to those islands where they belong. Another quick one. This is, and then, trying to bring in more examples of different types of plants that can now compete with all of the other nurseries out there that grow non-native plants, and seeing what we have out there that can compete, with plants found from all over the world. So for example, this guy right here is a maua, and we're one of the few places that actually has this tree in cultivation, but it's a gorgeous tree. It's found on, most of the large islands. But to me, it's just as beautiful as any other tree that we brought in here from other parts of the world. So, but yeah, and then this is a gardenia. We have 3 different species of gardenia that's endemic to Hawaii, meaning that it's only found here and nowhere else in the world. But yet we've pretty much done everything that we could to bring in every other gardenia from someplace else in the world and just blow them up over here. And right now, everybody's like crazy about this gardenia that comes from Fiji, and they call it the Kula gardenia. And we give them these Hawaiian names, and it just kind of falsely represents what is Hawaiian. But now I can go into a whole nother story about that, but we won't. But anyway, but yeah, so this gardenia right here is found on pretty much all the large islands except Oahu. But the other two endemic species of gardenias are found on Oahu. So, but yeah, that's just kind of us in a nutshell, I guess.
Amazing. Last question about plants. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, no. I can't. Yeah, I mean, I love bougainvillea. Oh, plumarias, this is the best. Ohia lehua. I have to say, ohia. Sorry, or lolu. I don't know. Lolu palms are pretty much up there. I don't know, man. I can't do it. I only if I had to choose ohia, it's only because there's so many different varieties of ohia that I could have an entire nursery of all the different types of ohia, and it would look like a super diverse nursery. But no, I can't. Yeah.
One last one before we move to Kanekoa. How big is your company now today? How has it grown? How large?
It kind of fluctuates. Now we're in the union, so we're actually a landscape company in the union, trying to fight with all of these other union companies to acquire, certain commercial jobs. And and the whole reason why we got into that was so that we can compete, and more importantly, so that these plants can compete. So many times we've gotten grow contracts, or we see jobs that go out. We work a lot with landscape architects, and we see what the landscape architect specs, and we're like, oh, we got those plants, no problem. We're just waiting for the call for the contractor to call us up to place the order, and then they don't. And a lot of times the contractor that acquires the contract, the landscape contractor, will try to ice out the native plants and try to get change orders to put in non-native plants. And so by us being in there, now we get these contracts and we try to do the opposite. We try to, we look at the what's spec'd out, and then I'll do my best to try and find a native substitute for a non-native plant, and then talk to the architect about, hey, let's do this instead, and they've been really receptive so far. So, so in that sense, yeah, we've grown from just 2 guys to now we have, depending on the time of the year and what contracts we have, we've had 52 employees at once, wow, all full time. But our nursery right now, we have about 10 people working in the nursery, and then another 15 landscapers, and then the admin side, so close to 30 maybe. Turtle Bay, yeah, that was a good one. If we get into later discussions about like how COVID or whatever came in, that job really helped us out, because during the entire lockdown, we re-landscaped all of Turtle Bay Resort. And I think for us, it was a momentous shift in our company. But at the same time, it was kind of a shift in the mindset of the hotel too, because now they're actually utilizing their landscape to help, teach their visitors and stuff. So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Mahalo, Rick.
Yeah, no worries.
Kanekoa, can you also share more about how Kākoʻo ʻŌiwi started, what you do out here?
Kākoʻo ʻŌiwi was started by 3 beautiful Hawaiians. And then in 2008, the Ko'olapa Hawaiian Civic Club, along with the Nature Conservancy and HCDA, we got Kākoʻo ʻŌiwi as a nonprofit. And then the current revision of it is what you see today. And so when you look at it as a school, it's really important that, see, the wind is acknowledging it, but the Kupuna Pe'e and the Ko'olapa Hawaiian Civic Club is very much a part of this on our board. And then they've kind of let us move the day-to-day operations of here as the ED. And obviously there's a lot of support without Pipe by Papahana, Hui Kū. Noah is a huge partner. I mean, that's the origin. It's a group of people getting together to hopefully do something correct for our island. is the best way I can say it.
Amazing. What did this aina look like when you first saw it?
It's always beautiful, yeah, but it was definitely overgrown and had a lot of different invasive species present there. But the whole purpose of it is knowing the mo'olelo from the kupuna of He'eia about what it was, or what it is, actually, I should say. It just had a lot of non-natives around it. So again, I try and deflect a lot, but it really is the community kind of took us in, led us, helped us to move. I was just blessed with understanding some pala pala to make this happen, right? So yeah.
Mahalo,
You want me
Kanekoa.
to talk slower, or is it okay? You guys can understand me all right?
Okay, you're right.
I'm a little nervous. I admit I'm around some pretty amazing people. So it's just, yeah, questions.
Mahalo. Do we want to show some of the visuals of Kākoʻo ʻŌiwi for folks?
It was very mangrovey.
Mangrove.
Loads.
So yeah, so like behind us, like I was trying to show them the old photos. Like this was a dirt road. It was all dirt and Java palm trees back here, and tall mangrove. And so like, that's why it's almost like when I can talk, huh? That's right.
Put the mic in your mouth.
Yeah, you don't need to see that. But that was one of the big things, is one of the families to get interviewed about, the Stink Bridge and the Long Bridge, and
How many acres is it?
we're sitting on about 405.
Wow, that's all your kuleana.
Our Kuleana, yes.
Did you guys do Hero of Hui Kū?
Yeah. I know, sorry, I didn't talk about it.
You can hear me, yeah. It is come back. It can really regrow. And this is up to Pu'ulani, where with our partners at UH Manoa, you see kind of, and then more Makalo'is, some of our staff, they have been doing an amazing job with that.
How many lo'i do you folks have now?
I mean, for us, we have about 20 acres in cultivation, but probably about 37 lo'i. But it all depends on different sizes, yeah. And we still have a long way to go in terms of the opening of the whole property.
How many acres total?
Yeah, so the total property size is 405, and then probably about 300 acres is actually in wetlands. But we obviously, with the removal of mangrove, which was 22 acres, we're going to convert that with wetlands. And of course, the Kapu'i staff has done an amazing job. Ali'i, Melissa, Yokepo, I mean, just great people. Here's some of the Mauka sections. HIR helped to fund that kilo station back there, and that's been our main area when we process certain livestock and just place where kids can run about the street. But yeah, that's our Mauka section. You guys up to see. When they did this B-roll, Windward Community College was actually helping us with our shoot.
Awesome.
So again, it does take a village to make this malama, this aina malama.
Mahalo. So now that we've set the scene for everyone, let's dive into some thoughts on social entrepreneurship. What has changed in this space since you folks started?
In the space of social entrepreneurship, or no, I just think that people are starting to be able to focus and recognize the work that they do. As it was kind of hard to put into words what we did, but yeah, social entrepreneurship is definitely a nice, concise word to describe it. But I think more people are becoming aware that it's a lot easier to perform as a business if you, like for us at least, if you stick to the mission that of why you went into business, and keeping focused on that, so the revenue that does come off of it is much more meaningful. But it also makes the work a little bit easier to stay focused in that sense of sticking to your mission. And there's a lot of, you know, distractions that might want to pull you away, but you don't have that same type of return, I guess. And I mean, yeah, the money would be great, but like for us, you know, we kind of stuck to our guns, and we were still able to you know, have some pretty serious cash flow, but still accomplish why we started the whole drive anyway.
I mean, like in the beginning, maybe when we were all getting started, folks didn't really understand what we were doing and why we were doing it. I think with your mission was like, people believe that. I remember seeing how many presentations you would have to do early on just to educate people about native plants. And then, you know, over time that just grows, and there's like more and more people want to grow native plants in their backyard. Now you got hotels wanting to landscape, right? So it took a while for that consciousness and like understanding for folks to kind of to realize that this is a viable possibility, right? And that I think consumers, whether it's businesses or individual consumers, understand that they have a choice, and that when we give them these new choices, they're going for it because there's this purpose to it, right? And if we can compete in the marketplace, like how Rick folks are competing in the landscaping and nursing, the nursery, and Koa folks are competing on you know, with their products that they're growing here, then we give people a choice. And when they have that choice, I think we're seeing more and more people taking that choice. So it is getting a little bit easier.
And finally, for me, with social entrepreneurship, our nonprofit, even though money is such an important thing, our mission is quite important too, which is the perpetuation of Hawaiian culture. And so we're often stuck with, we're killing it on the mission. We're meeting our criteria too, but then we have cash flow issues with nonprofits, since we cannot, you know, we have to spend everything by the end of the grant. So you constantly see this up and down. But with the support of our staff and community, it is happening. But it's just, it's been a challenge. And I would say with social entrepreneurship, I would, you know, we're in a hybrid model system. And so we're still trying to understand that and still trying to figure out our cash flow versus cash in promises and building. And so it's been a challenge for us. But I see that the social entrepreneurship around is positive and hopeful. You know, they're not as grumpy, but I am hopeful.
And, you know, and one thing to add around that, right? The rigor side of our business models is getting stronger and stronger as we're figuring out like how nonprofits can earn more revenue and be more business-like, and then how for-profits can really deliver on their mission and compete in the market. I think the mainstream business world kind of for social entrepreneurship kind of saw us as like naive, less rigorous business models, but that's changing. And like we're starting to prove through the value creation, through the sustainability of our orgs. I mean, Hui Kū's what, over 20 years old now?
Yeah, I started when I was 3.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're a prodigy.
It's
right?
been a ride.
It has. And even our funders are way more educated now and willing to take a little bit more risk on us as a nonprofit versus, you know, how we often fail because we're really risky. We have no see, I'm blanking now, but we have no money. We really have no principle to build off of. So we're really high risk. But then there are, like with HIR and Holy Mono, they have actually funded organizations to help us kind of meet that goal so that we're less risky.
De-risking.
Collateral. Having collateral as a nonprofit is very hard to build.
Right.
And so getting that loan is really a challenge. But can I drop names or what for people supporting us? Yeah, Heather Piper, thank you so much. You know, and, so, and then Holy Mono.
Everybody's like, who?
Yeah.
Amazing. Mahalo. As some of the earliest purpose-driven businesses or triple bottom line companies in Hawaii, can you folks share a little bit more about the ecological and cultural give back or impact that you folks have achieved? it.
first, or?
Either one.
Go for it.
So for Kākoʻo is the perpetuation of Hawaiian ahupua'a. All of us believe that if we can implement an ahupua'a system in Hawaii, our aina, our people, everything will be better. So the question is, what is an ahupua'a? And that we don't have enough time for that. But at least for us, we looked at lo'i kalo, restoration of lo'i wai, we call it loko wai. If we can implement those systems, not only will it provide food for our community, as you guys saw in the images, it provides habitat for our birds, it provides a system to mitigate flood pulses, so it's actually a climate strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And it also perpetuates our culture, education. So we know that if we can practice ourselves as Hawaiian and do Hawaiian activities, then not only will we generate revenue for our aina and for our community, but we'll also provide that ecosystem service part, that criteria two, or the third bottom line, culture, ecology, money, right? So anyway, that's the whole premise of what we're trying to build. And the main thing is to just have people get out of our way so that we can do what we need to do. Right? I mean, that's my job, is to let our staff go so that I get gray hair. And anyway.
Why are you looking at me for? This is by choice. I dyed it to make it gray. Yeah. Oh, me?
Yeah, please.
I think for us that's what we try to do is create ecosystems on the literal sense. And for us, it's hard for us to see our impact on a large scale, because as we're trying to fight our fight and get our plants out there and get everything, from internally out, there's still a lot of, silent destruction, invasive species that we're having to deal with. There's still places that are encroaching into native forests. And ironically, like even when systems are in place to help keep things intact, like for example, around a lot of communities and around a lot of people's homes is preservation land, right? But in these preservation land areas, they're dominated by non-native invasive species. And so it's hard to go in there and do any type of work to stop that invasion, because it's zone preservation. But whenever we drive around and I see plants in people's yards that I know we were the guys that propagated them, or if I see other nurseries growing plants that I knew came originally from our stock, I'm stoked. I mean, we kind of embrace competition. That kind of, I guess the entrepreneurial side is that kind of, we got to try and stay ahead of everybody. But at the same time, if people are trying to compete with us, that just means that there's more native plants going into the ground. And for us, it we see it coming. We knew that it was gonna be a part of what we had to deal with. And so we've always had, backup plans in place. It's like chess, right? You always got to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of your competition. But we want to work with everybody to achieve we want everybody to win the game. And if we all win the game, then Hawaii wins the game. And yeah, so I guess, seeing support coming in from other people that would also view us as competition is very helpful.
I mean, that's super unique, right? Like, look what he just said. Is like, I want to see more competitors come up, like, because it's about the purpose and the mission. And, folks like Rick and Koa with their business models and really pioneering and, creating new conditions for which we can have this kind of purpose-driven business, so that you can have more nurseries, you can have more aina-based organizations, restoring lo'i kalo and figuring out sustainable business models, is because of folks like this who are figuring it out as you go. It's not easy, right? Like, it's like plowing through new ground, and like you have to break the way for other people to come in and follow it. But that's really what's happening, to figure out how you make the economics of a lo'i kalo and an educational aina-based organization pan out, where you're not dependent on grants or donations to run your nonprofit and achieve your mission, but you're actually building in these earned revenue and through sales and other like business endeavors that are going to bring in revenue so you can be more sustainable. I mean, we see so many more AINA-based organizations today than there were 20 years ago. And there's no way that we're going to be able to sustain all of them on grant funding. And so folks like Koa and, like Waipa and other places like that are figuring out how to generate earned revenue in a way that is going to allow them to perpetuate and fulfill their mission, right? But also in a way that doesn't trade off the cultural imperatives of like how we interact and relate with Aina, how we malama and like live our culture, all those things. We don't have to trade those off in these business models. And it's hard sometimes, and it makes it more challenging, but I mean, I couldn't imagine wanting to do it the other way. Yeah, I mean, that's what it means to be like a Hawaiian entrepreneur. You cannot sacrifice your values while being successful and achieving your mission and business objectives.
Like for us, all of us, here in Heia, we're all super tight friends that just so happen to kind of land in place here, and all of our missions, in order to have each one of our organizations be successful, really contributes, in a positive impact way for the Ahupua'a itself, right? So, right now we're like a functioning Ahupua'a. And there's not a lot of places that can say that, so we got Pai o Heia, we got Kākoʻo, ʻŌiwi, we got Papahana Kuaola. We're all working together to support each other, but yet we're still functioning individually as separate organizations and businesses. And what I would like to see is, there's a lot of other businesses out there and a lot of other AINA-based organizations or culturally based organizations. Reach out to the other guys within your Ahupua'a, and kind of rejuvenate that functioning, model of your Ahupua'a. You don't have to necessarily be, a fish pond or farm lo'ikalo, but yet if you guys are working together cooperatively, you're homies and figure out who they are.
Yeah, I mean, like, as we're having, with you three hammers next to me, we're hearing the bombs drop literally right now. And so you can see I'm quite upset hearing that. I don't know if they can pick that up on the radio, but it's still a reminder that there's a lot more work to do, even within the Ahupua'a of He'eia, because it does go out to Mokapu, right? The reefs that are right there. There's all these systems that nature forces us together. Nature will bring us together, right? So what Hui Kū them do up above, Kamakau School, Kūlia Entrepreneur Civic Club, Auntie them working up in, it's all tied together. It's all one group. And again, like I feel hopeful because I know how great the individuals are. And yeah, here you can see photos of like there's individuals from the Nature Conservancy, the NER, HIMB, everybody's getting together to make kalopa'a for us, which is one of the products that we've been able to grow at Kākoʻo. And so it's just really like that image right there is the dream that, Auntie Alice, Auntie Carol, a lot of the kupuna of He'eia wanted to see again. They actually owned the poi mills in He'eia before. And so just to have that is a realization of their dream, of their want. I'm just blessed to be part of that pathway. And then here's Kimi-Oi, one of our chefs, just bagging it all up. But again, like that building was built during the pandemic. It was because a lot of our private funders that believed in that mission and allowed it to happen right there. And so that was, yeah, I'm old, so sometimes you got to repeat the question so that I can go back on board. Okay. I'm okay. You guys okay there? Yeah, everybody okay? Okay.
Everybody.
You guys okay out there?
Yeah. So coaching, it's almost like a passive aggressiveness that I do sometimes. So you ask your player, "Are you okay?" Because in your head you're like, "You're not moving fast enough. Better get swimming." But for them it's a genuine, "How can I help?" But it's a multiple uses
The question.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah, reel them back. Right on.
What is something you guys are most proud of? What's been rewarding about this journey?
I can keep talking.
I know, bro. We know. I guess, yeah, the people recognizing the importance of native plants. For a long time, all of our mentors that we kind of looked up to knew that, and they did their best to try and get that word out there. I think now it's kind of snowballed into its own, movement, which is great. And for us to be a part of that is really uplifting. One of the coolest things, like, when I started to get into native plants, I would kind of slowly, transform my parents' yard into native plants without them knowing, and I always thought that it would be so cool to have like a Kamehameha butterfly or a native bird come to one of these plants, and knowing that, it's never going to happen, but we did our very first landscape that we ever installed up at Level Heights, has amakihi come to it, to the lehua when they're in bloom. And that's kind of the number one thing that I would like to see, or that just kind of, made me feel like, okay, cool, right on, so, but having more of that out there, I'm sure there's other encounters of plants that either came from us or other native plants that people have grown that have attracted insects or birds or snails or anything to them, and that's really what it's about. Yeah, or being able to pick stuff for migley or for hula without having to go up, up Mauka to get them. You just surrounding yourselves with them. Yeah, that was the whole point.
And then for me, I'm just we've been blessed. We have a lot of kupuna take time to educate us, to malama us, to nurture us. A lot of families here. So just the fact that we're allowed to be on a journey, I have to mahalo like a lot of the kupuna pe'eia, my own family, my popo, gungung, grand uncles, because they're setting us up. And again, like I said, I'm happy to be on the journey because we're doing this for our kids, right? We're making sure that one day they can continue the journey, and their journey won't be done either. But just the fact that we as Hawaiians can be on that canoe or be on that path to Malama'aina, that I have to mahalo that, that's really it. Yeah.
I think for me, like when it was time for me, I felt like the time at ʻŌiwi TV was coming to an end. I looked back at where things were when we started to where they were in beginning of 2019, and it was clear, like, Native Hawaiians, we were in control of our stories. We had these new platforms with social media and YouTube and stream services and whatnot. Like, it's very clear. You can find Hawaiian content anytime you want it now. And there's more and more like media producers, filmmakers. I think there's like 3 Hawaiian language films in production right now. So it's become more normalized. And so that's been really rewarding to see that we were somehow like a part of that, right? It was a collective effort, but we had a part to play in that. And so that's really rewarding to see it come to fruition. Like our kids only know having Hawaiian language on TV now. That didn't exist before. But then also for me, what's been really rewarding is seeing folks like these guys be successful, right? I've seen the journey that Rick folks have been on and Koa has been on when he took over this place, and how much struggle and sacrifice they've made. Like, they're talking about the successes today, but it was a hard path for these guys and for a lot of other folks who are doing this kind of work, because the market wasn't ready, right? And to see these types of businesses and these types of entrepreneurs finding success and them being successful, and like people recognizing like I called Rick a nerd earlier. Like, he can spout out a scientific name of a plant, every single plant that you can see, right? But to see like smart and passionate guys like this who are like innovators to be successful and like be embraced by more and more consumers and the mainstream, and other kids and entrepreneurs and students wanting to go into this kind of business, like that's the most rewarding thing, is that we're creating where everybody is rising together in this new kind of way of doing business and being in Hawaii to make Hawaii a better place.
Mahalo, you guys. Speaking of challenges and kind of risks taken, what pivots and opportunities has COVID-19 brought to your folks' businesses?
COVID was actually super detrimental from our mission standpoint, because we couldn't educate, we couldn't perpetuate, we couldn't actually physically bring the babies and the families here in the beginning. And then because of the Aina side and then the support that we did get with COVID funding, we were able to move our teachers to more Aina base, which then opened up this whole new arm with virtual, and then basically kids coming in. Ohana program really exploded. So just a lot of opportunities to just get our people back on land, but not so much the educational arm. And then we had to repivot back, right? Which then created where the support was certain pieces still needed to be adjusted. And we had a major adjustment. And it's okay to fail. I want to make sure that everybody knows that, because how you get back up, I mean, that's super cliche, but it really is how you adjust to headwinds, how you adjust to mistakes, opportunities. Like, it's just really important on the journey that you take. And so like, I know for a fact, if the pandemic hadn't happened, there's no way we could have leveraged Opunui or the Kilo stations that have really allowed us to develop this whole new educational arm. But we did lose things too in the way. And so we're still adjusting, and we're still learning and still trying to grow with that. But still here though. So that's happy. You know, that's a good thing.
Mahalo. How about you, Rick?
For us, the COVID thing was surprisingly helpful, beneficial, I should say. I mean, COVID was horrible to begin with, but you know, during that whole lockdown phase, for us, we had just acquired that Turtle Bay contract to begin the work out there, and so, you know, certain things fall in place at certain times, and it's all about timing and having everything, you know, either work out for you or not work out for you. And for us, it fortunately worked out for us, where we had you know, a big part of our concern during this installation at Turtle Bay was the logistics of crowd control with all of the tourists and everybody out there. And literally the week that we started to do the work out at Turtle Bay and mobilizing everything, Hawaii shut down. And that was like, you know, because, you know, I had so many stanchions and barriers and everything set up in place to keep the tourists out from the construction area. Because, you know, unlike the rest of the hotel that was under full, you know, construction lockdown, public, and we're, you know, we're craning in coconut trees, we're, you know, excavating out huge holes and just you know, having cement trucks come in. It was logistically a really tough time. But now that there was nobody there, oh man, it was way easier. And then traffic was gone, so it made everything flow smoother. So there's one, you know, shining light. And then everybody got turned on to gardening, right? And we were still supplying the Home Depots. We got, you know, benefit enough to, or fortunate enough to start supplying City Mills. And City Mills been super supportive with the promotion of native plants. And then, you know, people would come out to the nursery. You would have to, you know, we had social distancing protocols and everything in place, but man, there was a lot of people coming out and getting excited about it. And then also wanting to landscape their yard, you know? So we were firing on all cylinders. And at the same time, we were also trying to open up another nursery. So we acquired another nursery in Waimanalo that we're going to focus more on native trees, you know, and larger plant material. And also have like a showcase area that people can see for themselves what 100% native landscape would look like, if anybody had any concerns. But we're still, you know, that area is still under construction. But yeah, it's been it's been kind of eye-opening, and during that time, and then plus all of the social media attention that people started to, you know, bring more traffic to our social media sites and everything. So it was good. It was good. So.
Yeah, for us, I mean, if for the few years prior to COVID, I was preaching and like on a soapbox around how Hawaii's economy was vulnerable and not working for other people. And then COVID hits and it's like, I told you. And so, and it was, you know, I think there's the consciousness around, we really got to work on diversifying our economy, like came to the forefront. And, you know, we're starting to revert right back to the way things were, right? And that, like, we cannot allow that. And so, but for us in our work at HRR, I think people started to listen a little bit more because we're like, look, we've been doing this for 8 years. Like, this is the kind of resilient business and economy that we should be investing in, because we had the data. Like we were showing how folks were pivoting during COVID, were able to be resilient against the crisis, to grow their businesses during COVID. And so we had a demonstration of our value proposition of sorts. And so we grew. We started to get more opportunities for folks to provide us investment capital to then invest in our enterprises and businesses. And so we're growing that now. And now we're looking to grow even more investment funding to seed more of and scale more of these types of businesses. So the opportunities grew for us out of COVID.
We got to focus on our local supply chain, for real.
Mahalo. On that point, to diversifying our economy and the impact of tourism, we could take an audience question maybe. This is from Joe Hagedorn. What are the panelists, what are your folks' thoughts on the intention of our Hawaii Tourism Authority related to educational tourism and Malama Aina programming? Good, bad, honest opinions?
Hello, Joe. No, honestly, Kalani and a lot of them, I mahalo them for the opportunity to try and make that pivot. They didn't expect it to be perfect, nor would I expect it to be perfect. So nor should it be perfect, but it's a process, and there's a communication going on. And we can say that we don't want tourists in Hawaii, but the reality is that's still part of our economy. A lot of our friends and family are part of that industry. And so there needs to be a way for our system to grow with everyone, evolve, transition, but knowing that there are red lines, there are things that make us uncomfortable that we don't want to do. And the good thing is they're not forcing us to have to do things that make us uncomfortable. And so I appreciate and mahalo HTA for making that effort. And it's a process, right? We are all on an island. We all have to move together.
This kind of change doesn't happen overnight, right? This is deeply rooted, complex systems that need to change, right? The economy is not a simple fix that's going to happen overnight with some instant solution, right? People want simple and easy and fast, and that's just not going to happen with this. And so I am fully behind what HTA is trying to do. And yeah, it's not going to be perfect. It's hard, but they have to navigate what is our present reality with tourism and how much it is part of our economy today to try to pivot it towards a more balanced and regenerative reciprocal relationship with our community so that we can change those dynamics and start to shift away from this mass tourism model that clearly a lot of people in Hawaii don't want, but there's no viable solutions right now. So we have to start to bridge towards new possibilities by trying different things. And so, yeah, I think what they're doing is great.
Yeah, I think that movement that HTA is making towards the individuals that come here is good, but I would like to see that shifted towards the corporations that are behind our tourism and making sure that the hotels industry, the hotel chains, all of the rent-a-car companies, all of these guys all got to be on board. And all of those guys that, I mean, we're the conduit for them to make money, you know? And so they need to start kicking back some of that to these Aina-based organizations. So not just...
Well, hey, tourism was pretty good for us when we owned it.
Yeah.
when
But
it was
we
all
don't own it.
locally owned and
Yeah.
all those profits, and it was locally managed, and the profits stayed in our local economy. But now with the reality of these big
Bad money.
corporations, a lot of those profits leave.
Right.
And so all of the solutions that we bring forward to try and change our economy really need to focus on keeping the wealth circulating in our local economy.
And that's why I think what HTA is doing is great, right? They're promoting organizations like ours and others that are going to be able to allow to keep that money in place. But still, you know, I mean, it's a drop compared to the hotel industry. So, yeah. Sorry, Turtle Bay. but Turtle, I mean, but that's another example of them actually seeing like, oh man, now they have an asset, you know, and now of the work that was done there. And it's another selling point for them, but at the same time, it's a teaching point. And so that's kind of, that's the kind of shift that I like to see, you know, and none of that was being discussed during the design phase and all of that, you know, but we were able to, we were given the opportunity to go in there and kind of inject our little, you know, hey, you know, how about this? How about that? And then now they're seeing it and now they're like, and so, and now it's really become a part of their operations. So, yeah.
Influence the value of
Right.
the cultural element.
Right. And just having that opportunity to do that, you know, on a larger scale, it would be a lot better for everybody on other islands to do that. Yeah.
So would it be like maybe on Kapalama's campus, maybe?
Yeah, let's do it. Nah,
Some are more progressive than others.
Just trying to throw some business at a friend.
yeah, but we're good. We're good. You know?
Awesome. Another question we have here from Shannon Tariki. As innovators and pioneers in social entrepreneurship and Aina-based Hana, what's the next phase of the journey? What are the futures you see in front of you? What's the next frontier?
For me, it's about succession, truthfully. Honored to have like the kupuna fought for this land in the past. I really want the current board and the kupuna that are still present, they're still alive, and we're grateful they're still alive. I want them to start a succession plan for me. I want to make sure that we can leave this nonprofit, create other nonprofits, and keep the wheel rolling of Malama Aina and Aina Momona. And so for me, moving forward as we develop more revenues and processes here, I very much want the succession to be established before. I want them to establish the succession, not me. Does that make sense? Like, that's
what I was going to say. Exit strategies as far as, you know, there's so much more that both me and my business partner want to do with the same, you know, mindset of how we approached Hui Kū Maoli Ola. Well, once we knew that we were going to do Hui Kū Maoli Ola and not just the accident part, but yeah, finding that the right people to keep what we've started in place and still at that same growth rate, but allowing us to separate ourselves from this attachment so that we can focus on other opportunities that we see, you know, is possible, but we're always being sucked back into keeping Hui Kū going. So on that note, we're looking for a GM. We're looking for, you know, an estimator. We're looking for nursery managers. We're looking for, you know, a bunch of positions within our company. But ideally a GM first so that we can, you know, work with the GM and the GM can kind of help create their own team, you know? And, but yeah, there's a bunch of other businesses that we actually want to proceed with.
I want to see the next generation take it further than we've taken it.
Yep.
There is this generation of growing up now who both Hawaiian and non-Hawaiian who like we're seeing more culture-based, Aina-based education in all of our schools. You know, DOE has adopted Hawaiian values and the HA framework. And so this next generation, like they've been learning and exposed to opportunities through places like this and other Aina-based sites that have reshaped their relationship to place. And then for some of us who our kids can speak the language, who are grounded in their culture, for their leadership to push even harder against the dominant system to create change than we could possibly have done ourselves. Like, we got a lot of work to do to unravel 150 years of extractive capitalism establishing itself here in Hawaii to get to a regenerative economy is going to take generational effort. And so for us, I think, and for me, I hope we're setting the conditions that are going to allow these kids who are much stronger and grounded in their culture, who know their place, to be able to stand on our shoulders and do even more than we were able to do.
Yeah, I'll second that, because like I have hope for our children. All of them went to Kaipuni. I mean, it's just like a lot of times you hear some of the kupuna, they want to see something done before they go. And for me, it's like, I'm confident and hopeful for my kids to make the right decisions, because the kupuna have given us Ike, we've provided that opportunity. I mean, I'll make complaint. I love my children, and sometimes maybe they're not as involved in Hawaiian things, but then I immediately hear them say something and it's like, oh no, their perspective is clearly there. It's just, it's not in the face like how we were growing up, where we got to be Hawaiian and show it. It's like, no, they're grounded, and just let them be. And then when they come home, okay, let's get going, you know. But it's just, I feel a lot of hope in that, even as we hear more couple getting bombed.
Yeah, oh, that's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's like Pohakuloa, same.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was thunder earlier.
No,
It's
they're
really,
bombing.
really intense for them. Yeah, the mindset, the perspective is totally in the next generation. Koa, can you talk a little more about the land-based kind of AINA-based ed opportunities here for students? And
Yep. I mean, it's hard, but people have to believe and really believe that the way our people manage AINA is the right way to manage AINA. I was blessed to have like Dr. Abbott and other Dr. Smith. I mean, just a lot of people teaching us science, and wonderful people, but also understanding our cultural tools that are used now to make this place better, right? Science, culture, it's all another way that we can malama AINA. And we have to have confidence when we might push back on certain educational systems to then provide opportunities and avenues for other educational systems, right? Does that make sense? So like, as we remove the educational pieces in Hawaii, the teachers, the principals, the schools gotta see that, oh wait, that is actually a better long-term strategy to do AINA based in school, to learn AINA, to learn language, right? There's all ways to tie that in. And so that's what we've learned here. So when you go out to leave, we have Ali'i Minor and Melissa and Yokepa and Brandon Okodana. I mean, I say their names out loud because I want people to know how impressive and important they are to malamaing and taking care of this AINA here. Because that whole mangrove project wouldn't have happened without them. And it's the skill set of keeping certain regulation branches out so that they can do what they feel is in their na'au to do what is right. And then my job is just to make sure we don't do anything illegal, but just right up to that edge and then pull back right up to that edge, because we've had more. Yeah, we're not breaking the law. We are not breaking the law, but almost right at that edge where, but that's the point, is as Hawaiians, we have to push. Like, what do you think? They're just going to let us, oh yeah, go be native and be happy. No, like we got to push that issue. We have to use equipment. We have to use, you know, like I always tease it, but I'm not 6'8" anymore like my ancestors, right? And so like we have to use equipment. We have to use all the tools that we can to malama AINA. I cannot say more. Like I was showing Rick like what that image used to look like when all of the mangrove was there. And like Auntie Alice and Auntie Carol, who passed away, they talked about the view before the mangrove was there. And so having our children now not at all remember the mangrove and just feel the wind and what Pai Pai is doing is great, is that right there is so, as she blow now, right? It's such an important thing to do. And that mana is something that we cannot measure. Anyway, I digress.
It's pretty crazy. I chirping in the background, and in the front of us, there's bombs going off. So it's kind of like just this metaphor of what we are faced with, right? Like, you know, we're trying to move forward, and as we move forward together, hey, we got good stuff that we leave behind, you know, but there's still major obstacles in front of us. And I think social entrepreneurship can help do that, you know. That's without necessarily directly, you know, putting a cap on that bomb, we can still progressively move forward and you know, leave behind what all of the hard work that we put into place as we still try to take on, you know, what we need to. Honune e puka aina. That was kind of our our motto before in our company, you know, slowly making that progressive change. And then now we just flat out say transforming land back to aina, you know, but there's a little play on that, but yeah, you know, being consistent with that message helps the progression. But yeah, it's kind of a trip right now hearing all of that. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but you know.
Amazing. For the last question, what does success look like for you folks? How will you know when you've accomplished what you've set out to do? When that stops.
No, I mean, we are successful now. The mo'olelo of what the kupuna went through in He'eia, other aina, and what we are doing now. We are hearing our keiki laugh. We are hearing our keiki olelo. We are hearing our keiki eat from this land. And that in itself, like as I told the kupuna before, it's like, I am content. I don't want to die, but I'm content with the activities that has happened in He'eia. And it's like, now we're moving for succession. Right now we're moving that transition. So the 30-year-old can come in and say, okay, old man, move out of the way and take over that piece. Right. And that's what we want to see. That would make me proud and happy when they can move me out, pretty much. That's hope. That's succession. And I see them coming, and I welcome that. So, sorry.
I think for me, from a professional perspective, it's seeing that entrepreneurs like this have the resources and supports that they need to succeed in their challenging journeys to scale. And that people who have wealth and capital are starting to move it towards this type of economic development, that we're seeing more of that money move that way. That's what professional success would look like for me. Personal success, seeing my kids be able to stay here and live here and find their purpose and path and livelihoods here. But I've also come to really accept the reality that the kind of change that I want to see happen isn't going to happen in my lifetime. And that we are just part of this continuum, and we got to do what we can with the time that we have here in this realm, in this lifetime, to contribute to that collective journey. And I'm okay with that now. Like, I'm okay with not seeing it manifest in my lifetime, but I know that I'm contributing towards it, and that's
happened, bro.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Plenty has happened, no doubt, but we still got bombs bombing our sacred places, right? That we're kept out of. And we still see our kids and our families having to move away. But so until we can solve for those things, like I'm confident it's going to happen. And I'm also okay that it may not happen in my lifetime.
I would like to see a change that just allows us to be able to live here, but not by making more money, you know, and not by basically giving in and saying, okay, I'm gonna do whatever it is I can to make more money to live here. I would like to see a different shift in that. But also, you know, from a success point of view, and this is in no way us, you know, claiming it, but being a tiny part of it, of seeing the bleeding stop of plant and animal species going extinct. We're not quite there yet, but at least the awareness to understanding it and the impacts of losing species here in Hawaii, what it has both ecologically and culturally, I think that's really started to take off. You know, now that there's more awareness to it, I think there'll be a lot more people in place in the future to combat that. But yeah, being a part of that jumping point is, to me, all that we could really ask for. Right now, if it took us, a little over 200 something years to get to this point of being ecologically screwed, I think collectively we can actually work to unscrew ourselves. So I didn't want to use screw. I wanted to use a different word. That implies the same thing, but ducks.
I lied. One more question. I think this is for you, Keoni. To the fourth sector companies that you were speaking to earlier, usually get structured as B Corps, benefit corps, or 501c3s or other structures.
That's a pretty nerdy question.
Yeah. Thank God. Don't ask me that question.
Who asked that question?
I have no idea.
It depends, right? Like I said, we don't fit nicely into boxes, and the U.S. tax code, you either have to be a for-profit or a nonprofit. And the B Corp is great. But the B Corp is really more of a marketing kind of designation. It doesn't have real tax status. So you choose, depending if your revenues are going to mostly come from, or predominantly come, or have a larger percentage of it coming from grants and those types of things, then you got to be a nonprofit. If you can earn more revenue and not be dependent on grants in the long run, then for profit. I mean, that's the simplest way to look at it. I'm not saying B Corps are bad, right? They just haven't proven to create a whole lot of value, because it's a process and it costs a lot of time. It costs a lot of money to set up a B Corp. And so for the most part, it's a marketing edge. We really need to change the tax code and create something more in between that is legally, right, from a tax perspective, have authority. It's happening in other places. I think Great Britain, Australia, they're doing some changes to their tax code. So we need to have those kinds of policy changes too. So
if you could measure your impact, and based off of the amount of impact you've done over that tax year, then your tax burden is less.
So they have this thing called pay for performance. It's like a social impact bond,
right?
So like if you're gonna deliver ecosystem services here, right, and like you would quantify how much
who quantifies
services,
it.
This is the new frontier. Like
right.
These ecological economists are starting to put quantitative and value.
Reefs, right? They're doing reef insurance. And
Right. So this is kind of the new frontier of how do we quantify ecosystem services or social services and put a value to it. And if you deliver on what you say you're going to deliver, then you get that money because you're actually saving society and providing real value. So it's a different way to fund enterprises like this.
Because as a business owner, that's one thing that you're going to have to deal with, is being comfortable with most of your money that you make not seen. So yeah, good luck.
No. What does being a Hawaiian entrepreneur mean to you folks? Keoni kind of touched on this earlier, but would love to hear from
Hawaiian entrepreneur.
you too. A Native Hawaiian entrepreneur.
I think there's an obligation, and then there's cliche with Kuleana, but there's an understanding that the money line isn't the only line. Yeah, there's multiple ways to build mana, and our pursuit of momona is something that has to be achieved. So you might not make the most money, but you've helped so many people. Like with the imu that we just had, right? So many people was touched because a pig farmer in Waianae donated the pigs that went to Luna, which just was able to use this building and give out so much food. Made no money, but damn, we helped plenty of people. And that was mana, right? And so I see some amazing Hawaiian businessmen, but then I still don't see that aura around them because, yeah, they have a beautiful house, but what have they done to build our lahui up? What have they done to help in the long run? You build shade for yourself, but not for our community. And so as a Hawaiian entrepreneurship, we need to make sure that we provide, when we build something or create something, that shade or that touch can help our lahui out. And that's basically my litmus. So anyway.
I think there's been a lot of Hawaiian entrepreneurs in the past, but being a Hawaiian entrepreneur whose business actually benefits more people than just yourself is, to me, you know, I mean, I don't know how to put it into words, but it to me, it achieves a level of business responsibility that kind of makes it more comforting, I guess. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of times people don't give Hawaiians enough credit for being able to operate companies and businesses. So having that like whoppy jaw type of like a chip on your shoulder, you know, like being able to tell people like, hey, not only were we able to you know, keep X amount of people employed, have this much impact, but you know what, we turned a decent profit too. And it's not like that every year. It hasn't been like that for a long time, but you know, once in a while you do get those opportunities to try and take advantage of. And so, but yeah, the whoppy jaw factor is critical. It's real. I know there's people that don't probably know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which sucks, because now we're just that much older. Everybody needs to go read Pitch Into the Max as part of your business model canvas before you start, you know, doing that. Yeah, yeah.
Played for all my nephews and nieces Puka Shell tour guide because they've never heard the song.
Oh gosh.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah.
Stop. But this question kind of plays on that. If you could go back and talk to your
Wait,
20-year-old.
You guys know those songs?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Come on.
It's okay. It's okay.
If you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what is one thing that you would tell him?
Well, I did that already.
Yeah.
Gotta reflect.
I had a lot of fun with him in my 20s. No, wait, stop, Koa. No, the truth is just don't. It's okay. I mean, for me, it's like I'm grateful for the opportunities I had as a 20-year-old. So I don't really want to tell him anything except go for it, because that's what I want to tell my 18-year-old son is you have the support, you know your family, go. So
I'll tell my 20-year-old self, there's this one night that's coming up in Anna Bananas that you need to watch out. Don't go that night. Enjoy the ride. I would tell myself, enjoy the ride, because I think I would, like, personally, like from my education wise and business wise, I mean, it was like a meandering stream. It just kind of went everywhere before I landed in this position, you know? And I think, I mean, all of it was kind of a trip, you know, and it was fun when it lasted, and it's still going, you know, but yeah, enjoy the ride. I mean, at UH, you know, my degree is in zoology, but it started in zoology and it ended in zoology, but in between it went to business, it went to architecture, it went to everywhere. You know, I only got my undergrad, but damn, I could have my PhD because I was in school so long. But yeah, and you know, yeah. And then if you do see opportunities available, go for it. You know, so yeah.
I want to add to mine. That just brought something up. I would also tell myself, like, trust the process. Our kupuna have a plan for you. You know, so long as you stay true to your intentions and, you know, like, be pono in how you engage with the world. Just trust the process and pay attention, because the signs are there. Follow the path, and you have a path, and everybody has a path, and so just trust the process.
Oh, good. Mahalo nui, you guys. Great questions, great answers. Appreciate all of your folks' time, ideas.
Keoni and you for keeping us on task, kind of.
A wild ride.
Yeah.
I can just close up a little bit. If you'd like to learn more about these guys and their businesses, keep up with them. We have website URLs. Doesn't respond to email.
Everybody at ʻŌiwi.
I'm so sorry. This webinar was recorded. Please follow our recording is posted, and about upcoming events like this one. Since we're wrapping up, it's time for our prize drawing. Do we have a winner? Our prize winner is Kanaina Warren.
Whoa.
You guys know him? One of the boys. Please let us know that you're still here by typing in the chat or raising your hand. That works too.
It wasn't rigged, promise.
And you win a Pigeon to the Max book.
Our Kākoʻo team will contact you and get your prize to you. Mahalo for being an attentive audience. We hope you gained some valuable insights today.